Showtime.
Welcome to the Fame GC Masterclass series, today featuring a discussion with my Fame co-founder, Judy Germano, and Dan Cohen, Chief Content Licensing Officer for Paramount Global and the President of Republic Pictures. Fame GC is proud to offer access to celebrated industry professionals, including Dan, through our special Mastering the Art guest speaker series, which highlights authorities in the arts communities for presentations, discussions, and masterclasses. I'm Beth Koretz, a Broadway producer, attorney, and entrepreneur. I'm here with Judy Germano, a leading cybersecurity expert, attorney, entrepreneur, and professor at NYU School of Law and Cornell University. Judy is also a Glen Cove High School graduate like I am and one of my dearest friends. This session is available to all worldwide. Today, Dan Cohen offers his insights and expertise on the rapidly growing and evolving global media and entertainment marketplace. We're grateful for Dan's generous support and participation. Fame GC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization providing programming, including sessions like this and other experiences, as well as scholarships, supplies, and mentoring to support music and arts education in K-12 public school. Our work relies on support from individuals and organizations, so if you are interested in making a donation or sponsoring a future Mastering of the Art of program, we would love to hear from you. Please contact us at info@famegc.org. Every amount makes a difference. And now, Judy and Dan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth. And Dan, thank you for joining us. I'm really looking forward to the chance to talk with you.
My pleasure.
So Dan, people come to Hollywood to write, to act, to direct, but there are many other great jobs that are creative in their own way, including studio executives and what we'll consider the business side of show business, which in itself is a fun business to do. If you could talk to us a little bit about the type of work that you do in Hollywood, in the movies, worldwide, really, I would love to hear more about it. And just for some background for our audience, Dan leads the Paramount Global's content licensing and distribution operations, responsible for monetizing a large and growing portfolio of original content that airs or streams on the CBS Television Network, the CW, Paramount Plus, and Showtime, as well as programming from Paramount Pictures, CBS News, CBS Studios, CBS Media Ventures, the MTV Entertainment Studios, Nickelodeon, VAIX, Miramax, and third-party partners through your Republic Pictures label. You also run worldwide home entertainment for the company overseeing the distribution of the industry's largest library of film and television titles. And through your storied career, Dan, it includes 20 years at Disney ABC, where you served as executive vice president of pay television and digital sales for home entertainment and television distribution for Walt Disney Studios. A lot of impressive talent, a lot of background and history, which brings me to a lot of questions. But let's please start with, what is it that you do?
There you go, in English. So there's a lot of great content in the world, whether it's big movies, TV shows, cartoons, news. It has to be paid for. So my job is really monetizing the content that this company makes. So it used to be content made at Disney. I've been at Paramount for 8 years. So a Tom Cruise movie like Top Gun Maverick or the upcoming Mission Impossible, a SpongeBob movie or a SpongeBob animated series, Fire Country on CBS, all the great Taylor Sheridan shows on Paramount Plus. My team helps pay for those by getting money for them from clients, networks, services, that are exhibiting them for consumers to watch. So something like Taylor Sheridan's shows. In the US, they premiere on Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus is part of my company, Paramount. But internationally, those shows will appear in the UK on Sky, in France on Canal Plus. And all around the world, people are watching these shows. And sometimes it's on a service we own, because Paramount Plus does exist in some international territories. But often it's on a third-party platform, somebody else's service. And they don't just get to put it on their service, they have to do a deal with us. And the money we receive from them for those rights comes into the company and helps us pay for the next Taylor Sheridan show. Movies. You go see a big blockbuster film in a theater, that's part of how the movie gets financed, is so people will buy tickets. But the rest of the financing is home entertainment. People still go to Walmart, Target, Best Buy and buy DVDs, or they go on iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, Fandango, and download them to own. If you go on a service and download the movie for $20, $24, a piece of that revenue comes back to us. My team does those deals. You can see the original Top Gun playing on basic cable somewhere almost all the time. We're about to release a new Mission Impossible this May. The prior 6 are playing on television. Well, they don't just show up magically. Clients have to license them from us, pay us money for the right to use the content. And that's what my team does. So we monetize content, and that third-party money fuels future production.
How big is this marketplace, Dan?
The global marketplace is billions and billions of dollars. Paramount, so my piece of it, my company, we're a public company. So what my team does is slightly different than how we report to Wall Street, but it's basically the same work. We have a category when we report to Wall Street. So our public reporting, content licensing, and other. And it's about $7 billion a year for my company. So it's significant. And again, if you weren't monetizing the content, you really couldn't afford to keep making it. It's funny, when I talk to folks, and I talk to a lot of really smart younger folks who want to make films, whether that means act in them, direct them, write them, all of the above. And they don't necessarily stop and think about, well, they have to be paid for, right? And at some level, everybody knows like somebody had to pay for the production, but that is a huge part of this ecosystem. And it has changed dramatically from, theaters being the only place you could see a movie. Home entertainment didn't exist for many, many years. And then HBO. Well, there was no Netflix. And when Netflix started, it was 3 DVDs per month in the mail. There was no streaming. So the world has really, really evolved. And my team's job and my job is to keep up with sort of navigating how to get the content where the consumer wants to see it. And it keeps it very interesting because every year feels different than the prior year.
So when people say they want to go into show business, to quote Al Goff, it's called show business, not show art. Of course, there's an art to it and an art to the business side of what you do in terms of knowing what to make, when to make it, how to release it, and how to monetize it. Can you talk a little bit about that? When you see the art, how do you translate it to dollars?
Well, first thing for folks to think about is it's a global marketplace. So you can make something that will only serve the US audience. You can make something that will only serve the Brazilian audience if you're in Brazil. But what you spend on a piece of content, whether it's a movie or a series or a cartoon or a documentary, has to line up with its value. So I regularly say when people ask me, like, could we do this? Like, you can do anything for the right price. And so you have to know the marketplace. And it's one of the more fascinating parts of my job is I get to travel the world. My division has 22 international offices. So we have folks in 22 countries dealing with their clients who are also in those countries. So we have an office in Rome dealing with Italy, an office in Munich dealing with Germany. And my team on the ground are much smarter about what's going to work in Germany than I am. But I do have the luxury as the department head of flying around and sort of dropping in and learning and then being able to aggregate it. So when I'm back here and I hear that we want to make a movie or Taylor Sheridan's going to do a show, being able to say, well, that will work everywhere or that will only work somewhere. And you can do both, but it dictates maybe what you spend. And one of the really fascinating things is what works everywhere. I honestly didn't know that Taylor Sheridan shows would be as successful internationally as they are. Like Yellowstone is a fairly traditional US Western. It's cowboys, Indians, it's a soap opera. It's beautifully done. It's great. I didn't know that it would work that well in Europe and Asia, and it works everywhere. Taylor's shows are global juggernauts. Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone, global juggernaut. Most recently, things like the new season in 1923 isn't just a huge hit here, it's a huge hit everywhere. And it's kind of fun to see that. And so a lot of what I do is socializing for our content creators. Yes, you can spend that much on this idea. Or no, you better be really careful because I don't think the international is going to be nearly as big on this as something else. So that's a big part of it, is sort of just trying to map out how much something will work and whether it makes sense to do it. On the Al Goff show business piece, the other thing is, I said it earlier, Judy, we're a public company. So we'd like to win awards. We'd like to do stuff that has social meaning, and we do a lot of stuff that wins awards, and we do a lot of stuff that has social impact. But we're a public company. We have a responsibility to our shareholders to be fiscally profitable. So if you make something for $5, it has to be worth more than $5. And you can't say, no, it's only going to be worth $2, but that's okay because it's a cool story. Or that's okay because maybe it'll win an Emmy. You know, our job is to try to balance all of it. But at the end of the day, I'm the money piece. I'm sort of the banker saying, yes, I can get the money back. So I have to really lean in on the black and white piece of, I can't sell that. Or I can only sell it for $2. So if you're going to make it, you should make it for $1.50, not $5. And that's a big part of my job.
When a show like Taylor in Yellowstone pops, is it because of Taylor Sheridan? Is it because of the genre or the subject matter, or because it's beautiful to look at, or does it depend?
It depends, but I'll go a little broader than the two words. There are times when you know up front that you have assets. When we did Yellowstone, Taylor was a known actor. He had been in a bunch of TV series. He'd been in some movies. He'd even done a couple of independent films that he wrote and directed. Hell or High Water being one of them. So he had a little bit of a name, but consumers around the world didn't view Taylor Sheridan as an entity. And Yellowstone was a bit of an unproven commodity. It was a bit of a gamble. It was produced for Paramount Network. And it just happened to work. So that was the one where the execution. Now, we knew he could do Westerns. So he had proven that he could write in that genre. He attracted Kevin Costner to play the patriarch, huge global movie star doing his first TV series. So we had things to suggest, like, there's a good chance here. We're not just throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping we hit a bullseye. But Taylor then wasn't something where I could go to Europe and say, I have a Taylor Sheridan show. Of course you're going to buy it. Now he's a proven commodity. And the fact that Taylor's doing a show, people are calling, asking how they can get it. Tom Cruise, in his youth, doing things like Risky Business, the movie Jerry Maguire. Oh, he's a really good young actor. He's cool. People like him. But you couldn't say you had a Tom Cruise movie back then and know that people were going to write you checks around the world to get it for their territory. Now with a Mission Impossible movie or a Top Gun movie, his next film is going to be at Warner Brothers, so I won't be selling it, but they will be. He's a known entity. Tom Cruise is doing a movie, you know it has value. So it depends a little bit. And there are also times where subject matter, something is just like catching lightning in a bottle. Like, this is a story that's going to resonate. And I'm not necessarily the best judge of that. Our creatives are better at, I think this is the right time to tell this story. And you bet on your creative folks to know that and to execute it. And I also have the advantage, again, you've heard us talk already about Taylor Sheridan, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible. We do all these giant CBS series, NCIS, FBI, Blue Bloods, Matlock, that I go to market and people look at our company and go, these people know how to make great content. So I had that benefit too, that we have credibility. We're not the only ones, but we're certainly one of the folks that delivers great content on scale year after year.
And you mentioned both NCIS and Matlock with Kathy Bates, which is in 150 different markets around the world. What do you think it is that makes the law enforcement and crime shows so popular? And I ask as a former federal prosecutor who does criminal defense work, and I love my job, but what's the TV hook?
Yeah, well, so those are CBS series. And the term for them is they're procedurals. And a procedural means that every episode has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So often in a crime series, somebody gets killed, somebody dies. And by the end, you know who did it and they've been apprehended. So audiences like that, even though, may not be how it worked when you were a prosecutor, that you could figure all that out in a broadcast hour. But a procedural has a beginning, middle, and end. A serialized show, I used to be at Disney, as we talked about, Disney ABC, and we had two of the biggest serialized shows in the world when I worked there, Desperate Housewives and Lost. No, episodes of Lost did not really have a beginning, middle, and an end. It wasn't story arc over a season or seasons. And that works great too. But the difference is that for repeat viewing, you can watch any episode of NCIS. There's over 1,000 episodes. You can watch the first one, you can watch the 50th, you can watch the 1500th, and the beginning, middle, and end, you have a satisfying experience. Maybe it's a Wilmer Valderrama episode, maybe it's Mark Harmon, but it's self-contained. Something like Lost was brilliant. But if you go back to just watch a random episode of Lost, if you don't remember what happened in the 3 episodes before or the 10 before, you're confused, like, what is going on? So CBS, and again, when I was at Disney, I competed against them. Now that I work at Paramount, I sell for them. The CBS procedurals work globally. And part of it is these shows have a beginning, middle, and end. The average consumer loves crime. They love great medical stories too. And we do some, but we've done more crime at CBS. And people just find it satisfying and interesting. And again, this beginning, middle, and end is really what helps drive it, because it's satisfying as a one-off if you didn't see the prior week or you don't know that you can see the next week. One of the things that Netflix established, it's now a very common term, but before Netflix it didn't exist, was binge viewing. Oh, I'm going to binge this series. Well, binge viewing, you can binge anything, but where it really resonated was on the serialized, because every episode's sort of a cliffhanger. Oh my God, I want to see what's next. Don't stop now. And you might binge NCIS and choose to watch 8 in a row, but you can stop at any point and it isn't like, oh no, I'm left hanging. So that's sort of one dichotomy. And in the broadcast world where a show's on once a week, these close-end shows work really, really well. So very long answer to your question, but that is sort of the distinction. And then I also have to just acknowledge that CBS, the head of CBS Studios is a man named David Staff. So he's the me of that division, but he's not a salesperson. He is a development exec. He knows story, script, actors, and his team produces these shows at the highest level. And you mentioned Matlock. Matlock is in its earlier days. It's only been on the network a year or so. He signed Kathy Bates. I read the script, the pilot script. He said, what do you think? I said, this script is brilliant. I loved it. He goes, can you sell it internationally? I said, well, it's going to be really hard. Well, why? You said it's brilliant. He said, well, the lead character is a 70-year-old plus female. And you've got to do, network TV, you got to do 20 of these a year. Like, you're not going to find somebody. He goes, well, who would you want? I said, well, you'd want Kathy Bates, but you're never going to get Kathy Bates to do a TV series. He said, what if I told you I already had Kathy Bates? I said, oh, I can sell that. And he had Kathy Bates, and Kathy Bates is a global phenomenon. She's a brilliant actor. She's a movie star. And that made all the difference in the world. Like, it still would have been a great script. It still would have been a clever idea. But if you didn't have a lead like that, and again, I'm very fortunate to have a colleague like David, because he knows that. He understands that. And what he brings me is a whole package. It's not just the script. It's not just the title. It's not just that it's close-ended. It all works. And Blue Bloods, it's in its final season. We did 12 or 13 seasons of Blue Bloods. People wanted to see Tom Selleck. And he would say to me, as long as Tom Selleck wants to do this show, I'm going to keep doing this show. And I would say, as long as Tom Selleck wants to do this show, my clients want you to do the show. So it's that whole combination. And then the network has had such success that the other thing in broadcast, because it's a linear network, is sort of lead in and lead out. So if you have a great show at 9 o'clock, more people are watching at the end of the 9 o'clock hour to see your 10 o'clock show. So you're able to sort of incubate and put new shows on the air that are consistent with what your audience is looking for. And the last part of this very long answer is that CBS has been the #1 network, I think 14 years in a row, and I think something like 18 out of the last 19 years, because they found a formula that works and they've stuck to it. They haven't ever said, oh, we don't want to be that anymore. And there's a tendency sometimes to want to be what the other guy's doing, and they've been smart enough to just continue doing what they do because it works.
Thank you. And you've mentioned a lot of great movies. I will say Kathy Bates, I would watch anything she does. She still instills fear in me from her performance in Misery, and pulls my heartstrings from so many other movies, but just an amazing, amazing talent there. So if you could tell us a little bit more about the marketplace, Dan. You mentioned Netflix and how they operate, and streaming and binge watching now, but sometimes Netflix or even Amazon may air Paramount productions, but then compete with Paramount Plus. So how does that marketplace work?
Yeah, it's a bit complicated. So if you're an independent producer, it's hard, but it's cleaner in that if you are a great writer, showmaker, filmmaker, you can work for anybody. You know, Netflix might buy a movie from you, and your next film might be released by Warner Brothers. And then maybe you write a series for Amazon. I work at a big company. We own a bunch of things like CBS and Paramount Plus, the two we've been talking about. So a lot of our series go to Paramount Plus. Our movies get theatrically released, then they go out in home entertainment, the DVD or download to own business, and then they go to Paramount Plus. But we want to monetize the content, where I started this, so that we get money from others to help pay for new content. So in the US, for example, a movie will be theatrically released, then it goes to home entertainment, then it goes to Paramount Plus. A couple months after it goes to Paramount Plus, it's on a service called MGM Plus, which is actually owned by Amazon. And a couple months after that, it goes on Prime Video. And eventually, it might end up on Netflix or Hulu, because you continue offering windows on your content. One of the great things about being a studio is people want to see the movies over and over. In a couple years ago was the 50th anniversary of The Godfather, the original Godfather, which is a Paramount movie. This 50-year-old movie. We had a record year licensing it. It was on Peacock. It was on Amazon Video. It was on Prime. It's on Paramount Plus, because people were interested in it. The movie windowing I just said was the US. In Latin America, we release our movies theatrically, then they go to Paramount Plus, then they go to Netflix. So a lot of it is country by country. What's the right deal? Who's interested in your movies? What will they give you for your movies? In the UK, theatrical, Paramount Plus, Sky Movies. So part of it, the reason that I have the 22 international offices, is it's not really one size fits all. And it's not even, there's a US model and an international model. You basically have to go into every territory and find a distribution path. So we do compete with Netflix and Amazon and Max and Peacock and Hulu, but we also work with them. And it's a complicated world, but it's been that way a bit all along. And folks in roles like mine have always had to license to services that are competing with services your company owns. So when I was at Disney, I was selling ABC's shows, but sometimes I was selling them to companies that owned NBC or CBS or Fox. So it's a little messy. But at the end of the day, my job, so my charter is very clear. My job is to monetize the content. And one thing that I've sort of glossed over, Judy, that's probably of interest to at least some of the folks that'll be watching, is if you're a content creator, what you want is the best home for your content. And you want the most money that you can get for your content because it's your livelihood. So a critical cornerstone of my job is to deliver that. So I'm the person who always gets to say, this is the best offer we have. May not be the most popular offer, depending on who it is, but this is the best offer. And the term for the writer, the director, the actor is they're profit participants. They own a piece of the production. So you have to do right by your profit participants. You have to take the right answer. And it's just part of the business. So it's definitely the show business side rather than the show art side, but it's critical. And that's part of what I do in my role every day is what is the right answer? Because it's not just what we want, it's all these other people whose livelihood is in part tied to the content.
So it's not just finding the content, but also the right time, the right place, the right budget. If you spend way too much more than you'll get, you may not be able to make the next one. So.
Yes, and the term that gets used the most for work that somebody like myself and my team do is windowing. So we're not washing windows, but it's windowing, meaning sequencing the content. In very simple terms, I talked about movies, but movies is a good example. In a theater, you want to see the movie in a theater, what do you have to do? You have to buy a ticket. Everybody has to buy a ticket. You can't buy a ticket and bring 3 friends on your ticket. So it's an individual cost per person. Each person pays to see it. The next window, home entertainment. You can buy one DVD and everybody can sit in the living room and watch that DVD. You could go on iTunes and download the movie and everybody can watch it. So it's like a per home transaction. And the only way your neighbor can watch it is if they buy a DVD or they borrow your DVD. But it's that model. The next window is called, the old school name is pay TV, HBO, Showtime, Stars. And now the streamers sit in that window, Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video. It's a subscription. So you're paying a monthly fee and the movie shows up there after home entertainment. And it used to be that there were no ads in that window. Now it's gotten a little bit more complicated because you can buy a lower cost subscription to Netflix and see some ads. But it used to be, okay, the next window is a subscription without ads. And then the movie would go to basic cable, TNT, USA Network, FX. And now you're not paying for a subscription to the service, but you had to pay the cable company to get FX and you're watching it in your mind for free, but there's ads. So it's sequential, meaning that, it gets easier. More people can access it each step and we get paid on a different model. And so that's sort of the genesis of what I do is sort of the funnel gets wider over time and the path to seeing it as a consumer gets less expensive.
And if we can talk for a little bit about your work at Republic Pictures, tell us what you do there.
Oh, I love to do that. So Republic Pictures was in its day an independent film company. It was sort of known by film historians or folks older than even me as the home of John Wayne. John Wayne made a lot of his movies at Republic. It was an independent film company that made a lot of B movies. Their headquarters were in Studio City, California. A lot of Westerns, but just a lot of commercial films. It eventually sunsetted and stopped. The library, again, as I've said, people see movies over and over. Owning a library of content's a good thing. Paramount bought the library years ago. There are 1,000 Republic movies that my team licenses, some more successfully than others. So that's where the name comes from. The work, about 2 years ago, I started creating new movies under this label. So Paramount Pictures makes huge blockbuster movies. I've mentioned Top Gun, Mission Impossible, Gladiator 2, the Sonic movies, big event movies. We don't really have an independent film label. 8-10 years ago, there was one called Paramount Vantage, but it was shut down at some point. But there's a marketplace for those movies too. So I started doing some, call them indie films. We wanted to have a label so people knew that we were doing it intentionally. And we just thought it'd be fun to use Republic. So we do about 8 movies a year. They're smaller budget. They're smart. They're interesting. They're a little bit arty. To give you some examples, there's one, we don't do a lot of documentaries, but we have done a few. There's a documentary we did called The Greatest Night in Pop. It's about the night We Are the World was recorded. Lionel Richie produced it for us. It's on Netflix. It's a really, really wonderful piece. It did really well for Netflix. We're very proud of it. There's a movie on Hulu, an actor, comedian named Jake Johnson, who was in New Girl. That's what most people discovered him. Wrote this. He wanted to direct it. He was willing to play the lead. Anna Kendrick was his co-star. Fun little black comedy. We made that with Jake. We took it to a different film festival, South by Southwest, and Hulu bought it in the US. So it lives on Hulu. And internationally, because again, I distribute films, I distributed it internationally, country by country. There's a movie we had this year at the Sundance Festival called Twinless. Dylan O'Brien's the lead actor, and a young filmmaker named James Sweeney wrote, directed it, and plays opposite Dylan. That will be released theatrically in the fall, but I'm proud to say it won the Audience Award at Sundance. One more, because it's right around the corner. First week in May, there's a film being released in the US by A24 called Friendship. Paul Rudd, Tim Robinson, Kate Mara. Really, really funny comedy. Tim Robinson is an acquired taste, but he's a genius. I don't use that word too often. And I co-financed it. So I didn't pay for the whole movie. I paid for half the movie, and I have the international on it. So A24 will release it in May, and I'll release it internationally. So it's just a way to add content to my portfolio that I wouldn't otherwise have, and let my 22 international offices be able to say to their clients, oh, we have some cool independent stuff too. You like these movies. And again, if I spend $5 on one of these movies, I have to know that it's worth more than $5. As much as I love making them and I think it's fun and we're telling interesting stories, if I thought they were worth $2, my job is not to spend $5 to make $2. But again, we know sort of the distribution space because that's what we do every day. And we're sort of able to tell filmmakers, oh, we really think this is great. We'd love to do it. Can you do it for this amount? And if the answer is we can do it for double that amount, we wish them well and we don't engage. So that's sort of what Republic is up to. And in 2 years' time, it's been really fun and we've had a good bit of success. There's also a movie on Prime Video that we're really proud of called Snack Shack, a little independent comedy. So if folks are Prime Video members, and almost everybody on the planet is, if not for the video, for the free shipping, but probably for both, that's another one people can check out that's already in distribution.
So Dan, you did answer this question in your remarks or alluded to it, but for the audience, when people talk about an indie film, it means an independent film. But what characterizes something as an independent film?
That's actually a great question, Judy. literally what the name implies is part of the answer, which is it's not a film made by the major studios. The major studios being Paramount, Disney, Fox, which is now one company, but two labels and for years were different companies. Sony, which bought the historic Columbia and TriStar. Warner Brothers, MGM, which is now part of Amazon. Like those are the major studios. So it's a movie made by others. And that can be, producers coming up with some financings and getting a film made and taking it to festivals, hoping somebody wants to distribute it. It can be a company like A24 that I just mentioned. Another independent company that's had great success the past couple of years, Neon. They did like a little horror film, Longlegs. A movie like Anora is a classic independent film that won Best Picture. Brutalist, independent film. Sort of that space. Where it gets a little confused or confusing is I mentioned we used to have Paramount Vantage. And now I'm Republic, but I'm owned by a big company. Universal is a major studio, but they have Focus Features, which operates like an indie. Fox is a major studio, but they have Fox Searchlight, which operates as kind of an independent. So there's a little bit of Warner Brothers has New Line, which operates as an independent. So there's the literal, all these companies that are separate from the major studios. But because it's a good business within the major studios, we all more or less also have an independent label. And it tends to be films at a lower budget. But again, there's no ground rule. There's no rule book that says if the budget is above 15 million, it can't be an independent film. Or that if it's below 15 million, it has to be an independent film. It's sort of the lower budgets. They're the more, maybe more niche movies and or movies made by third-party companies or under the auspices of these labels. And a lot of them, this is sort of what we've done with Republic, a lot of them debut at film festivals. And again, that's not a rule book thing either, because Paramount Pictures will take some of its biggest films to film festivals. Mission Impossible, the new one's going to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. But for the most part, if you see films at Sundance, South by Southwest, the Venice Film Festival, the Telluride Film Festival, Toronto International Film Festival, a lot of those are considered to be indie films. They show up for the first time at a film festival for people to see them. And out of that, they may attract a distributor. Netflix may show up, Hulu, and say, we want to buy this movie. Or A24 may show up and say, we want to acquire distribution rights. My movie Friendship that I mentioned, it premiered at Toronto a year ago, and A24 came, saw it, and made a deal to take the US rights. So it's almost more like you know it when you see it, than, oh, if you check these three boxes, you're an independent film, and if you can't, you're not. Does that help a little bit?
That's terrific. It helps a lot. Thank you, Dan. And given how different the budgets would be of, say, a Maverick versus an A24 independent film, how do you measure success?
Well, not everybody will answer it this way. But again, going back to my job, which is to monetize content, whether I'm distributing for big Paramount a Tom Cruise movie, or I'm distributing for my label Republic, Twinless, I measure success largely on, did I get a return on the investment? Did we monetize it successfully? Did we make money, in simple terms? Now, I also do want the films that I'm doing, and I'm sure most people feel this way, to be good, to be well executed. And it's kind of a hollow feeling if you make a film and like, oh God, we did everything wrong. I don't like this movie, but we sold it for $2 more than we spent. So I guess it's okay. Like that's never really the goal. But I do, if there's been one theme through the discussion, is my role is very specific: monetize the content. So do a really cool movie like Twinless, but make sure that you get more for it than you spend. And That's true whether it's an independent film. The folks at A24 have been in business 10, 12 years. They're really smart. They're really successful. Consumers view them as a brand. Oh, it's an A24 movie. I should pay attention to that. And they have a movie in release right now, Warfare, that is not an $8 million budget. They stepped up and spent more money because they knew that what the material and the filmmaker, Alex Garland, would warrant it. So I think for them, it's a very similar answer. You know, they have investors. They have a responsibility to make stuff that they believe will be profitable. And they also want it to be really good because they're, you know, trying to build their brand. In 2 years, I don't know that any consumer could tell you that Republic Pictures exists, but the folks at the festivals have started to look at our submissions, I think, differently than when we first started. Like, oh, Republic does cool stuff. And if what you do is a lot of direct, even if it's profitable, then that starts to go away. So I sort of view anything we put our name on as a deposit into our brand equity, and you want it to be a good deposit as opposed to maybe a bad one where you're hurting your equity.
And if we could talk a minute about that brand equity and marketing, because for A24 has been known for just putting forth brilliant productions, but also some pretty substantial marketing. How much does the marketing and the merchandise have on either a particular film or on a studio's success?
Well, the marketing is critical. And whether it's a small film where your budget's smaller or a massive film, the marketing is an absolutely critical component. And no film can be successful without a successful marketing campaign, in my opinion. And I am not a marketing exec, so I'm very deferential and respectful of the folks here that do that because it's a skill. And if you don't market correctly, and by the way, one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot, it's a cousin of marketing, is a release strategy. Right? You are competing for consumers' attention against other films, against sports, against concerts, against vacations, against back to school. Holidays matter, weather matters. And there's a whole art to not only doing the marketing, but figuring out when are you going to put your product out. The consumer products matters too. And it matters more for some content than others. So I mentioned it in passing, but not in much depth. Paramount owns some great family IP. We own SpongeBob, we own Paw Patrol. When we make a Paw Patrol movie, when we do something with SpongeBob, we sell a lot of merchandise. And it is an absolute piece of the puzzle. And when we do a movie like Twinless, I don't know, maybe there'll be a coffee cup, maybe there'll be a soundtrack. It's far less impactful. So it does matter, but not on every movie, whereas the marketing matters on every movie. The release plan matters on every movie. But where the consumer products matters, it matters a lot. So it's a huge business. When I worked at Disney, one of the things that they would say to us is a dollar made on a Disney film is more valuable than a dollar made on a different film because we have consumer products. We have theme parks. We have Disney branded channels. Disney Plus today, in my day, it was the Disney Channel. So that's really valuable. If you can build in success, sell a bunch of Cars merchandise and then build a Cars land at the theme park, like that's hugely valuable. And a genre movie isn't necessarily going to do that for you.
You mentioned the indie film Twinless, and I understand James Sweeney was rejected more than once in his efforts to get his film made. What can you tell us about that?
So I don't know the actual count, but I have heard James use the number 150 times, several times. He did a panel at Sundance with other independent filmmakers where he said, look, we got rejected 150 times. So one thing I would say is you have to be persistent. If you're watching this and you're somebody wanting to make a film or television and you've written something or you're a partner with with somebody who wrote something and you believe in it, you have to stick with it. And in some ways, the path to entry is better than ever because you can self-produce things and self-publish online. Not always practical, like if you need millions of dollars rather than 50,000. But if you believe in it, persist, network, keep at it. And it was interesting at Sundance, James's panel, the other panelists just sort of, Judy, on your earlier point about independent film, they were generally on the theme of, we independent filmmakers need to look out for each other because the major studios don't care about us. They care about their big movies. And James, to his credit, said, I just have to say I was rejected 150 times. And then the folks at Republic read my script and they said yes. And they are independent minded, but they are owned by a major studio. So don't assume that the major studios aren't a path. It might be that you have to talk to Searchlight or Focus or Republic. But the moral of the story, at least for me from James, was he knew he had a good script and he believed in it. And he also believed that he should direct it, not just sell the script and then go write another one or go on a vacation. And he stuck to his guns, and we had to believe that he could direct it. He was more indifferent on whether he acted in it. But one of the characters was sort of written for him to play. And we absolutely supported him playing the co-star opposite Dylan O'Brien, but 150 rejections. And that's several years of his life. It isn't like he couldn't do other things. He kept writing, but he stuck with it and he got his film made. And now it's going to be theatrically released in the fall. And I'm really, really happy for him.
So the message of endurance, resilience, courage brings me to my next topic, wrestling. I understand that you wrote your master's thesis on professional wrestling. How did that happen, and how is that relevant to what you do today?
It did happen. Master's in radio and television at San Francisco State University. I'm a proud alumni. The thesis is in their library. You can go check it out. I'm not suggesting you want to. So I went to graduate school, and most of my colleagues were a little older than me. I went within a year of graduating from college, and many of them had been working for a few years. And they were, to generalize, my classmates were very well-intentioned, very smart, and they wanted to tell important stories. They wanted to do news. And I was just a pop culture kid. I love pop culture. Always wanted to work in television. I love being entertained. I love entertaining. And I grew up loving wrestling. And wrestling is great storytelling. And I had huge respect, having not met them, but for the wrestlers, that a wrestler could get in a ring and have 18,000 people cheering, booing, sometimes both, depending on what you're saying or doing. To me, it takes you back to like vaudeville, it's performance. And I just fell in love with it. And I found a legitimate topic, which I won't bore you with, that the university said, well, that's actually a real topic. Wrestling was a staple on television when I was in graduate school. Wrestling has been a staple on television since television began. Gorgeous George, who's a wrestler from the 50s, was one of the first TV stars. And in the early days of TV, wrestling solved a bunch of problems. People liked it, so they would watch it. And it was very self-contained, right? You put a couple of cameras around a wrestling ring and you have a show. So it has always worked. It's interesting timing because now you have the WWE with multi-billion-dollar business, and they're on cable television. They were on the Fox network until recently when they flipped their deals. They are on Netflix. They are on Peacock. It is a massive business. And they're, when they do WrestleMania, it's 2 nights. They sell out football stadiums. So I've just always really been fascinated by it and have really appreciated wrestlers. And I now have the good fortune that I distribute a wrestling franchise, a wrestling show called WOW, Women of Wrestling, It's actually owned by Jeannie Buss, who owns the Los Angeles Lakers as well as this. And it's all women wrestlers. So yeah, it's wrestling, and it can be goofy, it can be over the top, but it's entertaining. And they are all women. For the most part, they're former Division I athletes who like to compete, who like to be physical, who like to perform. And they're getting paid to do something that they love. And it's on in the US in broadcast syndication, which means it's on local TV, typically on the weekends. I live in Los Angeles. It's on KCAL Channel 9, Saturday and Sunday nights at 11 p.m. and midnight. It's on Vice, the cable network, every week as a rerun. And we're in our third season, and it's been really fun and really rewarding. And yeah, that's, it's something I have some passion for.
So in addition to your work at Paramount and at Republic Pictures, Dan, you also operate 7 FAST channels, or free ad-supported television.
Yes.
What is a FAST channel?
So fast channels, you nailed, Judy, the acronym. The way to think about it, I think, is, to me, it's the next generation of television. And it's already here, but it's growing exponentially. So for me, it's my biggest growth area, sort of year over year. If you buy a smart TV, it's the easiest way maybe to describe it, a Samsung TV, an LG TV, a Roku TV, and you turn it on, all these channels are there. And they aren't CBS and NBC. They aren't old school basic cable channels. You're not turning it on and being sent to ESPN. You can still subscribe to cable and get there. You can get to the broadcast channels, but there's a series of channels that the set manufacturer is putting on. And they're just channels. So we own a service called Pluto that's in this space. And Pluto has, I think, 300 channels. Amazon, if you go on Prime Video, there's a live TV link. You click on live TV, it takes you to these channels. So it's kind of fascinating that we've come to a place where they're just channels. There's a CSI channel. There's 2 pickleball channels on Amazon. And they're free. Who knew? People like free. Well, how do you pay for them? Ads. Who knew? If it's something you're interested in watching, you'll sit through some ads. And the more targeted the ads are to you, the happier you are. So it's these services. Another one that's very prominent is called Tubi, T-U-B-I. So I wanted to be in the space. So I have 7 fast channels, 2 with Tyler Perry, who has a partnership with BET, which is part of my company. And Tyler is an unbelievably talented content creator. And he has a huge following. We have 2 with the CW. We are a minority owner in the CW network. So we produce content for them, and we can use it on this channel. And they have their own content. Library movies. As I've said earlier, movies, people want to see movies, new movies, older movies. So we did one with Miramax, which is an indie label that everybody knows. We own half of Miramax. We did a comedy one. I wanted a good comedy partner. National Lampoon. There you go. What says funny like National Lampoon? We also have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles channel because we own a lot of Ninja Turtles cartoons. And then one that doesn't exist yet, but we announced for the fall. Very different, but I'm really excited about it because it's different. Tony Robbins, the self-help expert, whether it's interpersonal things, business. Tony's been in the business of helping people for 40 years, and he's recorded thousands of hours of content, and he is a juggernaut and a force. We convinced him to do a channel with us. So that'll launch in the fall, and Tony's putting his name on it, so Tony will put his smarts and passion behind it. And I think it's going to be somewhat revolutionary for the space because he has such a following and he has so much to offer that you'll be able to go on these services and there will be, Tony 24/7. And I'm really excited to see how it performs. But FAST is the acronym, and the platforms are the ones I sort of mentioned: Tubi, Pluto, Roku. Amazon was called Freevee, and now it's just part of Amazon Prime Video under the Live tab. And that's your answer.
It's an interesting evolution. We went from having commercials to not having any commercials at all, and back to ad-supported television.
Yeah.
And from your examples, Dan, it sounds like it's a real mix, that sometimes it might be a known celebrity or a big name or something that's already known and popular. But is there a certain requirement or indicator of what might be a hit for a fast channel?
It's evolving. Like everything I do, probably like every walk of life, is evolving. But the fast space, you nailed it. I think, Judy, it started out as, oh, it's an easy way to monetize content, which is what people like me are hired to do, right? Every day. That maybe clients aren't calling to write checks for. Andy Griffith is one of our shows. 60s comedy. Gunsmoke's one of our shows. They were two of our first really successful fast channels. Because so you need a lot of episodes. Because if you're going to run something over and over and over, you can't have 30 of them, because by the end of the first week, people will be bored. So you need hundreds of episodes. And it can either be of a show, or you can say we're going to do Westerns and put 4 different Westerns together. So the category started really opportunistically with old library content that wasn't being used. So I'd rather have somebody watch it and make a little money from them watching it from the ad than nothing. And as people have learned to space, more people are showing up. So you can actually put newer content on because the revenue is growing. And you can say to a Tyler Perry, let's get your best shows and put them on, because the viewership will be there and the ad sales will be there, and it'll be worth it. So the content's getting newer and better. The sports category didn't exist in the beginning, and now it's growing quickly because sports cuts through. Roku has live baseball games. They do a whole bunch of NBA stuff. They are going to partner with us on a wrestling-based channel. Tubi had a WWE deal for a while. So sports cuts through, but in the beginning, nobody knew enough to bet on paying for the sports content. So I think what you're going to start to see is newer, better stuff because the audience is growing, which means the money's there. Tony Robbins in the beginning would have said to me, like, you're a nice guy, but like not enough people are going to be there to watch my content. It's not worth my time. And now he can see how many people are using this space. He's like, I think there's something here. And this has largely been in the US, but almost anything in content that starts in the US, if it works, it migrates outside the US. So my view of the fast business is it's growing in the US every year, and it's going to do the same internationally, but it's just starting. So there's years of international growth. And somebody like Tony has a following all over the world, and will be able to distribute this all over the world.
So Dan, we have just a couple of minutes left.
Sure.
If you could let's go to the beginning. How did you get your start?
I always wanted to work in television. Not everybody knows what they want to do. And I didn't necessarily know what that meant. But I really love television. And I love movies, but I really wanted to work in television for some reason. I have an undergraduate degree in economics. I took the 2 TV production classes that my school offered. And the professor who taught them and I talked about the fact, like, I want to do this. And he suggested I look at San Francisco State and go maybe get a master's and really spend more time in and around TV. So I went to graduate school. And when I showed up, I think that they had asked me, I'm sure they did, what do you want to do? I said, I want to work in sports production. What does that mean? Like, I would love to direct baseball games or operate a camera at football games. And at the time I was at school, I sort of realized 2 things. One, that's really hard work. And I was okay at it, but there were people that were just better. Like, I could operate a camera. You can learn to do that. But there were people that were just more gifted. Started thinking, like, it's actually pretty hard. Like, if it's raining and you're the center field camera operator, you're in the rain for 3 hours, and then you got to fly to some other city to do another game. So that some of the glamour was starting to wear off a little bit as I learned what it really meant. And in parallel, I was taking all these classes. It's graduate school, television, morals, theory, history of TV. It's like, oh, I'm pretty good at that. I have an economics degree. I'm pretty good at numbers and business. Maybe my lot in life should be more on the business side. And I worked my way through graduate school working for a cable company. And early days of cable, when they were still trying to get people to sign up. So I learned a lot about cable. And I worked for a number of cable companies after I graduated. And every job I took, my goal was to get closer to Los Angeles. So I was San Francisco initially. And closer to like making, selling, scheduling, producing something TV rather than working for the cable operator. And the two converged when I got a job at a startup. So I networked. Nobody called me. I networked. So if you're younger and you're watching this, network incessantly. It's easier today than it used to be because of things like the internet and email. And found a startup. Maybe you want to work at CBS, but they don't feel like you're ready. Find somebody, fast channel that's hungrier. Maybe they don't pay as much. Maybe it's not as glamorous, but maybe they'll let you get started. I worked at a pay-per-view network. So we put movies on, boxing, wrestling. Did I say wrestling? Oh yeah, wrestling. The fact that I had a wrestling master's thesis, they thought was ridiculous, but really helpful because people paid a lot of money for the WrestleManias. You understand that? You'd work on that? Absolutely. So an early network, a startup, but it was in Los Angeles. It was programming, and I was on the acquisitions team. So I was buying independent movies. I was helping do the wrestling. And out of that, I made a lateral move. So that's another life lesson sometimes. I wasn't wooed away by doubling my salary or a fancier title or travel. I went from there to Showtime. But Showtime was a bigger service. It was more established. They didn't just do boxing, wrestling, and movies. They also did original series and other things. And they hired me. It was lateral. I didn't get a raise. I didn't get a better title. But I went to a place where there was more opportunity. And from there, I went to Disney. And I went from buying content to selling content. But I was selling content for the Walt Disney Company. So for me, it was a progression of trying to just get a little bit more each step. And more, to me, was often when I was younger defined as more opportunity, not necessarily more money or more status. And I have 2 boys, and I've encouraged them the same way, like who you work for, what you're being allowed to do, are you being allowed to learn early on, to me mattered more necessarily than are they going to pay me 30% more, otherwise they don't deserve me. Like I never stood on that principle.
It's great advice. And I did the same in my legal career when I was in law school and took internships that were not paid, but then I had to do other jobs on the side to support myself, but to get the experience that I wanted to do the career that I wanted. And so the trade-offs and how you measure the experience can be very important to the calculus.
Yeah, absolutely. And networking and just always being willing to say yes to something. That was the other thing. At Disney, I was there 20 years, and I sort of got known for being the guy that would do the weird new things. Oh, we're going to try to put a movie on a phone. I'll do that. We want to put a movie on Xbox. Yeah, I can figure that out. ABC, which is part of Disney, did the first deal ever with iTunes. And Disney did the first movie deal ever with iTunes. I didn't do either of those deals. Other people did, more senior. But then somebody had to operate it. It's like, I'll do that. That's really cool because like it's what's around the corner. It may not be big and impactful today, but that's where consumers are going. That takes us back, Judy, to the Fast comment. Like Fast doesn't sound that glamorous. It started with Gunsmoke and Andy Griffith, on a Roku device. but that's where consumers are going. So I want to be there. I want to stay relevant. So that's been a big part of the path for me personally.
Do you have any failures or challenges and lessons learned that you would share with our listeners here?
Well, definitely some lessons learned and some failures. That nobody gets everything right, and it's really, really hard sometimes to know, what the world's going to look like next year, let alone 10 years from now. And I've done some 10-year deals where the client wants 10 years worth of movies, and it's like, how do you know? So you do the best you can with the knowledge you have, but definitely have had some things fail. I mentioned putting movies on phones. I did several deals where movies went on phones years before anybody cared. The deals didn't work. The companies went out of business. And, nobody yelled at me, screamed at me. Disney survived it, but they were mistakes. And even more recently with Republic, I touted some of these really cool films that we're so proud of. We've had some films absolutely the analogy of what not to do, where I spent $5 and got back 2.5. It happens. In the film business, more films lose money than make money. So you're going to take a well-intentioned turn at bat, and it may work, but sometimes it doesn't. And you have to try to learn from it. Why didn't it work? What would we have done differently? And sometimes the answer is, I wouldn't do anything differently. It just didn't come together. We've had some films where they read better than they turned out, or we made it and somebody else made a similar thing, but theirs was better. So definitely, if somebody tells you they've never failed, they're either not being honest with themselves or not being honest with you, because it happens to everybody and you just have to persevere. And certainly in the entertainment space, more films fail than succeed. Many TV shows never get past the first season. There's still TV pilots. More pilots don't get converted into series than do. So you have to be thick-skinned. If you're an actor, you're going to get rejected a lot more than you're going to get hired. And you just can't take it personally. You just have to keep going. You're James Sweeney, 150 rejections, and now you've won the audience award with the same project. It isn't even just that it was his next project that somehow struck gold. He stuck to his guns. So I've had plenty of things not work. And you just have to, try to learn from it and move forward.
Great advice. Not to be afraid to fail. The worst crime would be not trying.
Oh, I feel strongly that way. And again, when you are a prosecutor, you really want to get it right. If you're a brain surgeon, you really need to get it right. In entertainment, you just need to know that you're not always going to get it right, but that's okay. Because that's just part of the creative process, and that's part of the math that we all do. I'll make this my last tangential anecdote. I'm a big baseball fan. I've mentioned sports a few times. If you hit 300, you might be an all-star. If you hit 400, you're going to go in the Hall of Fame. If you hit 400, what that means is 6 times out of 10, you were unsuccessful and you didn't get a hit. So, it all depends on what you're doing. And you just have to know going in, you're going to fail a lot, and that's okay, because that's the nature of the beast.
In your amazing career, to end on an up note, what would you say is your greatest success, Dan?
Well, one, I guess you asked for one, longevity. So I've been, I mentioned 20 years at Disney. I've been at Paramount 8 years. As you heard, anecdotally, had a number of jobs before that. It's, a contracting field in some ways. So it gets back to the fast comment or chasing the weird new stuff. I think my greatest accomplishment is I have been willing to adapt and have continued to adapt, and also recognize that there was an area that I'm good at and leaning into that. Like at some point I could have said, I've just gotten old. I'm only going to work here if you let me just make movies. I'm only going to work here if you let me write and direct. And they probably would have said, that's cool, go do it somewhere else. That, I found a space, I gravitated to the business side of show business and have been, and have adapted and have been willing to try things and continue to try to think about what's forward thinking, and it's led to longevity. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that I'm still here doing this. And I think if nothing else came across on our chat, Judy, passionate about it. Like, that's the other thing is, like, I'm very proud that I come to work every day with passion. And when I talk to our creatives, because I have to sell their content, I want them to know that I feel that it's a privilege to represent them. It's not a headache. It's not a hardship. I don't groan when they ask how we're doing for their show. I don't think it's an imposition that they want me to read a script. I love all of it. And I try to be respectful and passionate.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Changes all the time. But I will say this. The pay-per-view job I got that really launched my career, I was asked then, what's your favorite movie? And at the time, it was Fast Times at Ridgemount High, which I still love. I don't know that I love it over every other movie. It's not a Paramount movie, so I probably shouldn't say it's my favorite movie. But that movie helped me get my first job in Los Angeles. So that definitely has a special place in my heart. I don't know if you can see it, but Pulp Fiction sits behind me. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is one of my favorite comedies of all time, is right over there on my wall. So I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I thought it was inventive and creative, different, and I love that it's in our library. So I didn't give you 12 answers, but that's a few.
Well, you provided a great list. I have a long bit of catching up on my watching from our entire conversation of some shows and films that I either need to see or I'm ready to go see another time. Some favorites there. Dan, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the lessons on endurance and passion and not being afraid to fail, and a lot of information about how the show business works on the business side, which is incredibly valuable and helpful and gives a lot of opportunity for people who may be drawn to the industry and need to find their way in it. So thank you so much for making time with us today. It's been
my
terrific.
pleasure, Judy. And I'm just going to end by saying, as a parent and as somebody who's been working a long time, where you end isn't necessarily where you start. If you want to work in entertainment, get a job. It doesn't have to be the end-all job. And if you really want to be a creative, but you can get hired by somebody like me to monetize content, to help get content distributed, get your foot in the door, right? It's a long journey. Nobody's first job resembles their last job. So I'll end with that. But it's been a pleasure. I'm glad we were able to do it.
Thank you so much. We're really grateful. And I think Beth is still here with us. Beth?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Judy and Dan. We hope everyone enjoyed today's Mastering the Art of TV and Film Distribution program featuring Dan Cohen. Today's program will be added to FameGC's YouTube page, where you can also find our Mastering the Art of Screenwriting with Al Goff interview. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and follow us on our socials for up-to-the-minute notifications about our inspiring program and initiatives. Our work relies on your donations. If you're interested in making a donation or sponsoring a Mastering the Art program, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider supporting our programming. And thank you very much on behalf of FameGC. We appreciate your joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. Dan, thank you again.
All right. Very good. Well, have a nice day, both of you.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.